to join us this evening. I'm Jackie Hopkins. I'm a proud 2010 graduate of the Communication Studies program, and I'm the president of the Klein College Alumni Association. So I just want to thank you again for joining us. I'm thrilled to kick off our second Klein Voices conversation. I'm going to share a little bit about myself, my experience as a fellow OWL and a member of the Alumni Association. And then I'll introduce our topic and our moderator for this evening, David Brown, who will guide our conversation around the future of work in the communication and media industry. So first, a little bit about me and the Klein Alumni Association. After almost 13 years ago, I actually began my connection to the Alumni Association as a student representative. It sounds like another lifetime ago somehow, but also the last decade and everything we've all been through, sometimes it also feels like just yesterday. And so giving back to Temple has meant so much to me as I'm able to pay it forward, the time, the creativity, the financial support that Klein afforded me throughout my undergraduate education. I'm a first-generation college student, and I grew up in Philadelphia, right in Olney, not too far from Temple. And so Klein's commitment to the Philadelphia community, to student success, and to the real-world learning that we strive ourselves to provide to students has really allowed me to grow and thrive in my career. I work in events and communications within the higher education field. And so for those that might be joining us for the first time for the Klein Voices series, we kicked off this series last spring with a powerful panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion within the communications and media industry. The series was designed to create a space for Klein College alumni to come together and engage in meaningful conversations around topics that are critical to our industry. As you know, so many of our thought leaders, our change makers are in this field are our own Klein College alumni and OWLs. And so we celebrate their stories, their voices, and their impact in the field. Today's event is going to feature 4 dynamic Klein alumni panelists who are talking with David, our keynote being Darla Price, and they'll be talking about the future of work in an ever-changing environment. I think we can all agree that's one we're all facing as both employees and employers in our organizations. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and our moderator, David Brown, Assistant Professor of Public Relations and Diversity Advisor to Dean Boardman within the Klein College of Communications and Media. Additionally, Professor Brown advises Temple's IDEAL, which is the Institutional Diversity, Equity, Advocacy, and Leadership Office at the university. David, thank you again for leading us in this meaningful conversation. The virtual floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. It's always a pleasure working with you and the alumni. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. This is going to go quick, I know, even though we are slated for an hour with this topic and this conversation. Well, typically we'll just run out of time. So we're going to try to get right to it. I'm so pleased to be a part of this. And as Jackie had mentioned, I am the diversity advisor to the Office of the Dean for Klein College of Media and Communications. But I also, which might be relevant to this conversation, is that I'm also an active practitioner. I've been a practitioner and agency owner here in the Philadelphia market for almost 40 years now, which has been a proud distinction for me. But I also run the public relations internship and field experience program here at Temple. So I do have a lot of experience in terms of some things that we're talking about in terms of the future of work. But you really don't need to hear from me. You really need to hear from our panelists. And our first keynote speaker is Darla Price. Darla is a longtime friend and colleague. We've known each other. I won't say how long, but we kind of grew up in the business, even though I'm way older than she is. But just to give you some background on Darla, just to give you some context. So Darla is the president of DDB New York. She's the first Black president for the New York office and brings a really rich global experience that delivers business and culture driving ideas for clients. And I'm so pleased that I've had a chance to be part of her global experience as she's been in other places, because before she was at DDB, she was president and executive leader at McCann. She spent time at Saatchi and Arnold, working with some iconic brands like Microsoft, McDonald's, Olay, General Mills, Lockheed Martin. And I also need to share that Darla is a talented executive coach. She believes in maintaining empathy in business to build the future of leadership. She was an ad color change agent nominee in 2020 and is on a mission. And I love this in terms of her mission to change the face of advertising and the face of the industry to reflect the awesome, diverse world that we live in. So Let me welcome my friend and colleague, Darla Price. Thank you for being with us, Darla. Appreciate
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to get right to it, if I could. I mean, I think that folks really want to hear from you. You are in a unique position. You took on the role as president of an iconic advertising agency at a time of really uncertainty that most of us have never been through. So as you were brought on to lead DDB New York as one of the industry's most iconic agencies, what have been some of your greatest challenges in making the transformation that you're pursuing happen?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, look, the biggest challenge was entering a role like this in the middle of the pandemic. You know, I believe it or not, I started 10 months ago at DDB New York, and my first day I was at home in front of my computer, you know, meeting my entire leadership team in the agency because we were closed on yet another New York sort of pause. So, you know, that's been a really interesting journey. And I think something that you all will experience if you're, you know, students about to enter the workforce or folks that have just entered the workforce, you know, the first few years, there is this huge thing happening right now that you might have heard about, which is the Great Resignation. Yeah. And a lot of people at all levels, at all ages are rethinking their lives. They're rethinking the industries that they work in, right? And it's caused actually a dynamic that I think actually puts many of you students in a place of power, because in the past, I think we had very much employer-led arrangements when it comes to job hunting, and now it's really employee-led. So that's been the biggest piece is, you know, everything is competitive. You know, we lose candidates sometimes within hours, right? Because there just are a lot of options across the industry. The one thing I'll say though is, you know, at DDB, you know, Bill Bernbach, our founder, used to say an idea can turn to dust or magic depending on the talent that rubs up against it. Wow. And, you know, talent continues to be something that's really important to me and the entire agency. And we rolled out a new positioning called Unexpected Works recently. And, you know, the philosophy of it is that some of the best ideas, David, are the ones that, you know, you never saw coming. And so we take that same approach to how we look for great talent. But I'd say a combination of the pandemic and the talent wars have definitely been the biggest two challenges that I've had.
Wow. Well, I'm curious, you know, because I kind of lived this with you. Why would anybody take on such a challenge? I mean, not only with such an iconic agency, but at such a time with, you know, and not lost on me the fact that you're not only the first female, the first African-American female to take on this role at DDB New York. Why would you do such a thing?
Because I'm crazy. You know what, I grew up in the industry, and actually I shouldn't skip a really important story, which is David and I worked together. My very first internship and job was with Brown Partners, which was a company David owned and ran at the time. And, you know, my career has taken me to really interesting places. And, you know, last year I was ready for a new challenge. And, you know, DDB is going through this huge transformation. And I just was so taken by their commitment to people. And I think right now, as leaders and folks who run organizations, this idea of empathy is just so much more important than it ever was. And I just was really taken by the mission of DDB and wanted to make a change. I also just, I feel blessed to be in a role where I have the ability to, you know, change the dynamic and look at my leadership team differently. We've now gone from 12% diverse to 40% diverse. Wow. And to truly build an agency that reflects the world. And by way of that, right, can do even more impactful and interesting and breakthrough work. Absolutely.
Can I ask some basic questions? Are you all physically back in the office yet? Are you all doing a hybrid situation? What's it look like, knowing about how where New York is and how, to your point about good ideas, don't really care where they come from, the whole notion of the socialization of the culture that happens in an agency. What's happening in DDB New York?
Yeah, sure. So we're back in 3 days a week and then 2 days remote, and everybody can choose what days they want to be in or out. And it's so far, it's actually working really well. You know, I think one of the challenges in this moment in time and culture is, it's really, really tough to build workplace culture with the hybrid model. So, you know, I'm experimenting with lots of different things. We do tons of events. We do a lot of free food. You know, we do parties. And I think ultimately, though, the future of work really is the workplace should be a social atmosphere, right? Because I always say, if I'm more comfortable sitting on my sofa doing work, there's no incentive for me to come into the office. And people come in because they miss their coworkers, they miss their friends, they want to chat. You know, there's more hallway conversations that are happening. So, you know, right now we're actually reconfiguring the space a bit as well to have more social sitting areas and things like that. But right now we're doing a 3-day in and 2-day out.
Oh, that's great. And I know that you said at the top of our conversation, kind of like looking at the fact that things are, you said before, there's an employee market, now looking at just that may be where it is now. Love to get your view on what you see on the horizon, because it does become a pendulum swing. Sometimes, you know, as the economy picks up and clients, you know, start, you know, increasing business and so forth, the need for talent becomes different and better and more robust. So what do you see on the horizon? I mean, and I know it's hard to predict because things are so unpredictable, but, you know, this time next year or 6 months from now, what do you see?
Yeah, I think, for starters, I think that inclusion will become way more important because, you know, it has a new meaning now in the hybrid model, right? Because people who are in the office are feeling the energy and the vibe, and then people who aren't often feel left out, they're missing conversations. And so I think leaders have to be more intentional with how we bring people along on the journey, knowing that some people are in and some people are out. I also think the outlook on creativity is evolving and sort of shifting, right? Because we have, you know, long known that digital is king, and, you know, it's no longer just about the TV spot, but I think in the last few years, even more so, right? Because most people are online, they're all about digital experiences and customer experiences. So I think clients will start to shift, you know, more to that place. And then I think for the job hunter, I actually think now is a prime time if you're looking for a role, because you're in a seat of power where companies are more adaptable to, you know, even if the role is 3 days in, 2 days out, some companies will say, you know what, this role maybe doesn't have to be in the office, right? So there's more flexibility, I think, for the job hunter than there's been in the past.
Now, I'm in full disclosure. Right before we started our time on Zoom, I took a stroll around campus. We're just kind of walking around, went by Bury Beach. Mr. Softy was out. I mean, it's 74 degrees in Philadelphia, so, you know, that's kind of all, you know, the kind of reality. But I'm curious, were there experiences that you had at Temple that helped prepare you, or maybe what you might have missed, what didn't help? You know, in terms of, because I met you very early in your career and I was impressed from the gate. So are there some things that, you know, that part of your Temple experience that helped inform your path?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, the sun is,
it's a halo. It's all good.
I know. So yes, I mean, one, I'm jealous because when I went to Temple, Tyler School of Art was nowhere near me, and I wanted to go to art school, so I'm jealous. So anybody who can take advantage of that, please take advantage of it. I was a part of the student-run ad agency, and I don't know if it still exists, but
it does.
Okay, cool. So shout out to Dr. Mara, who is retired, but he was my professor at the time. I think for anybody who can experience something like that, it is astronomically going to change your trajectory. I mean, I remember coming out of college and I had a book and I would interview and people would say, how do you have a book? And I would just have pieces of work that I was a part of. I'm not a creative, I'm a business lead, right? But I had all the strategies and all the pieces of work. And so take advantage of that type of thing, because I think when you're in it, you think that it's not as valuable as it really is. I also just think internships are important. I know it's one of those things that, you know, people go back and forth on, but in today's world, it's important for you to have real life experience, even if you just, you know, even if you just get one. And then I would say for those of you who maybe are on the cusp of graduating or just recently graduated, know that you're ready. And it's such a small thing, but when I graduated, I felt like, am I ready? You know, and that affects your spirit a little bit, right? And I think if you just constantly say, I'm ready, that's something you can take with you for your entire career. You will never question a promotion. You'll never question a big job that maybe somebody's offering you, right? And so know that Temple has prepared you in all the best way. And I truly believe that Temple was, if I could repeat college, I would repeat it. It was just an awesome experience. So, you know that you're ready. And, you know, I think Temple has set you guys up for success.
Wow, man, that's powerful. I know that we don't have a lot of time with you, so I want to make sure that, you know, and those folks who are watching, if you have questions, you can send them either in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll try to get to them. But I want to just ask this one question, Darla, in terms of, like, you know, you're right. We have students, we have alumni, some young, some a little bit more seasoned. What would you give them in terms of advice in terms of their own career path? One thing that I've really appreciated in terms of our relationship is that with the career path, sometimes it pivots, sometimes it winds, sometimes it's straight, sometimes it's detoured. What would you say would be good advice just in terms of the folks who would be, you know, looking at emulating the success that you've achieved? Yeah,
sure. So I'm actually going to give a piece of advice that you gave me a very long time ago, which was great advice. So when I was, I think, a sophomore or junior, I was offered an internship with the 4 A's. And it was an internship that was in another city. It was in Detroit, Michigan. And I remember I got the call and I was happy I got the internship, but I was thinking, Detroit, Michigan, I'm not going to Detroit. And I was interning with David at the time. And I said, well, what do you think? And his advice was, it's not about the city, it's about the opportunity. And it was true in that moment, but it also has been true my entire career. I mean, I've lived and worked in Singapore. I have lived and worked in Mumbai, right? All things that if I had been so caught up in the city or the place, I would have actually overlooked what a great opportunity it was. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second is, look, the road to success is always under construction. One of my favorite quotes. Ooh. So it's right. It's not straight, to your point, David. It's not linear. You're going to take some left turns. And I think they're all meant to happen for a reason, you know, to put you on the path that ultimately is where your heart is.
Absolutely. We do have a question that I need to ask, but I would also say, because I know that you are also a big believer in mentorship and other people who can help to guide you. So I'm honored to be considered having a small part in the journey that you're on. Well, one question is that, what was your first job and how did you get it?
Well, technically my first job was with you. So, but maybe I'll talk about my first and my second job, and I'll be quick. My first job, I'll tell you how I got it. I was interning at the Star Group, which I think still exists in Cherry Hill, New Jersey somewhere. No? Okay.
But yeah, okay. I know what you're talking about.
I'm old. Yeah, I'm old. So it was in New Jersey, and I used to drive there like an hour to get to this internship, but I was like, great, I have an internship. And I hated the internship, to be honest, hated it. And I made it my mission, though, to get to know people within the company, because, you know, I figured I might not like this company, but I might meet somebody who knows somebody who could help me find a job. And I ran into David Brown at the copy machine, didn't know him. He was not on the team that I was interning for. And we got to chatting, and he said he made some copies. And then he said, you know, if you're ever looking for another internship, I'm opening a company in Philly. It's a part of the Star Group, you know, would love to have you, right? And so I share that story because I think you have to expect the unexpected when it comes to job hunting. You know, I can also tell you, I sent out, this was back in the day when you sent faxes. I sent at least 50 faxes to every ad agency in New Jersey and Philly and got no response, right? My second job, also through a relationship, it was through an internship I had and somebody I met. Her name's Tiffany R. Warren, and she called me one day and said, hey, there's an open role for an account soup. It's in Washington, D.C. What do you think? Right. So I think staying connected within Temple is important. And I also think staying connected within the internships is important because it really is a relationship business. And be okay with the informational interviews, right? Because you might talk to somebody who says, I don't have a job, but this person is a great person to talk to, and you just never know, what happens from there.
Wow. I promised I was going to let you go at 20 after, and I'm now 2 minutes over my limit. So I can talk to you all night. But do you have any parting thoughts that you wanted to share with the group? You dropped so much knowledge. I couldn't write fast enough, but I know some folks are capturing all the pearls of wisdom that you dropped. So any last remarks you want to share?
No, just thank you so much for having me. And, I support all of you virtually. And, I love Temple. I have such fond memories, and I wish all of you well. So thanks for having me.
Wow. And thank you, Darla, for all you continue to do, not only just in terms of the Temple alum, but what you're doing in terms of shaping the industry. Man, so I'm just so proud.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darla. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So folks, we're about to shift into the panel discussion. We're going to have some really powerful, and you thought Darla was great, and she is, absolutely. But our panelists are going to be coming on, and we're going to introduce them in sequence. I again want to also encourage folks, if you have questions, you can certainly put those in the chat. We've got people who are monitoring the chat. And I'm also looking at it as well if you have any questions that you want to raise. But we have such a diverse panel that's coming up that I want to start to bring them on. So I'm going to ask my colleague and friend Don Ramos, who's kind of like the wizard behind the scenes, to start spotlighting our panelists. So they can, and I asked the panelists if they could start to turn their cameras on so the folks can see you all, and we can start to have our conversation. I'm really interested and really anxious in a very good way to talk to these folks. Some of the folks, and with full disclosure, I've had the pleasure of working with when they were students. Yeah, I'm getting old, it's all good, but they're getting better, which is wonderful. So it's a great opportunity. So what I'd like to do is introduce our panelists, get into our conversation. I've got a series of questions to ask them because they all have a different perspective. So I'm gonna, if I may, take my facilitator privilege and introduce my long lost cousin, DeVaun Brown first. DeVaun is a proud native of Pittsburgh, and DeVaun, just so you'll know, I went to Duquesne University, so it's all good. Living in Brooklyn. My daughter lives in Brooklyn, just saying. After graduating from Klein in 2015, he started his career as a media technology analyst at Publicis Health in Philadelphia. I know that firm well. January 2020, DeVaun began his account management role at Google, working with major advertisers on their marketing goals and advertising campaigns. DeVaun is passionate about helping others bring their visions to life. He ultimately wants to make a lasting impact in the world by creating innovative work that inspires others. So welcome, DeVaun. You make sure that your mute button is off so we can hear you. And I'm going to introduce everybody else and pose a question for us to go. So just say hello, DeVaun, if you wouldn't mind.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro, David.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next up on my Hollywood Squares is Lindsey Casella. Lindsey, you and I had a chance just to kind of connect very quickly on some of our planning calls. So let me introduce Lindsey, who is the Vice President of Marketing at Recycle Track Systems. She serves as VP at Recycle, which is an environmentally focused materials and recycling management company, and she's an executive MBA candidate at NYU Stern. Congratulations on that. I know it's coming. She's a trailblazer, though, in sustainability, and Lindsey previously was the Global Senior Marketing and E-commerce Director at TerraCycle's Loop and led social media for the nonprofit Remake. During the pandemic, Lindsey spearheaded the viral #PayUp campaign, which garnered 250,000 plus signatures and unlocked over 15 billion of lost garment worker wages. That's incredible. While also expanding Loop's reuse pilot to 5 countries with partners like Ulta Beauty, Walgreens, Kroger, and Burger King. Prior to becoming an eco-woke, and I love that term, eco-woke, so I'm going to steal that right now. Thank you very much, Lindsey. She afforded agency and brand experience with quintessential fashion and tech retail brands such as Victoria's Secret, Pink, Aerie, Verizon, Anthropologie, Keds, and Ralph Lauren. So say hello, Lindsey, if you would, please.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be back at Temple, even if it's virtual.
Yeah, glad to have you back. And last but certainly not least is a former student of mine, Kelsey Boyd. Kelsey, Corporate and Social Responsibility Communications Coordinator for the NBA. This is her season. It's a wonderful thing. So glad to be talking with you on this, Kelsey. As coordinator and social responsibility communications at the NBA, Kelsey supports the league's various social impact work through communication, special and public relations efforts. Her portfolio includes diversity and inclusion, NBA Cares, the NBA Foundation, the National Basketball Social Justice Coalition, and the league's thought leadership strategy. But prior to joining the NBA, she spent 2 years at the NFL serving as a public affairs coordinator. And in that role, she developed and implemented communication strategy to support the league's social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and player health and safety efforts, and a whole lot more. She served as one of 30 postgraduate interns at the NCAA National Office before she joined the NFL. She received her bachelor's in strategic communication from Klein College, and she was in two of my classes. So I'm loving you, girl. It's all good. And a master's in sports business from the School of Sport Tourism and Hospitality Management in 2018. So say hello, Kelsey, if you would.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So what I'd like to be able to do is kind of open it up for all of you to ask, if I can ask this question about, when we just had a great presentation from Darla Price, where she shared her story and her pathway. I'd like to find out what were some of the most unexpected learning moments for your organization and yourself, particularly given the fact that we're still, on the tail end of the pandemic, which, as Darla had mentioned, has been a learning experience for everyone and every industry. So whomever would like to start first, I'm going to be the referee, but what has been some of the unexpected learnings that you've been able to experience as a result of this time we find ourselves in?
I'll jump in. I think the most unexpected learning experience for all of us, both in my current company and the company that I was at before, was that we can all do our jobs from home. I think a lot of the leaders that we work with, just none of us were used to it, but I just think that it was something that was so just foreign to them and how they kind of wanted their groups to work, right? And so as we're kind of entering this return to office and figuring out what our office schedules are going to be and what our protocols are, how that's evolving, I think you still find leaders that are grappling with that and kind of saying, okay, well, we did just work for 2 years fully remote, but I still kind of want you guys to be in, and just trying to, I think, balance expectations, but also kind of respect for their employees in terms of, hey, no, I recognize that you kind of went above and beyond, even so when we were in a very uncertain place, right? And I need to kind of give you that respect to understand that you need the flexibility and that you can do your job from home, but then also balancing the needs of their kind of higher ups and our CEO. So I think that was the most unexpected thing that people are still kind of dealing with right now.
Lindsey or DeVaun?
Yeah, I think building onto that, a huge learning for me was just the communication style of how I worked with my teams. So I think one of the things that is different from being in person versus remote is just generally having the need to over communicate. Things move very quickly being in a startup. And so there's still a need to connect, and sometimes emails don't cut it. So I think in general, that was one of probably the biggest things that came of it, is the teams that did make those process improvements by having that time set up either at the beginning, end of day, or throughout the week, got ahead and stayed pretty cohesive and together throughout the start to the end of the pandemic. And then also, I think the other thing was just seeing people as they live their lives in their homes. So I think it was really cool to not just get to see my team and interact with their families, but then also to see some of my brand partners and senior leaders of organizations we respect within their own environments, having their own hardships, whether it be a kid running through the background or a pet. And so I think it was a very humanizing experience too, aside of just the autonomy and flexibility that being remote provided to everyone.
Thank you for that, Lindsey. DeVaun, what was your most unexpected learning?
Yeah, I think my most unexpected learning was actually looking at the work-life balance of things, because everyone sort of approached it differently, especially with working from home for about 2 years. Some people really thrived with work-life balance and, loved working from home. And then there were some people on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, like myself, who really had a hard time or a challenging time with, setting those boundaries. So it was unexpected to really see, how vast that spectrum was and how people really were affected differently.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not lost on me that when I look at our screen that we're in 2022 and all three of you have graduated from Klein 6 or 7 years ago. And we take those 2 years out, as you all had mentioned, of the pandemic and kind of like where we are now, how things have changed so differently that no one could have anticipated. So I'm curious in terms of being able to kind of get a sense of, like you all had mentioned about work-life balance and flexible schedules and things of that nature. Do you see that some of these things may stay? Or I think the other question too is that we've got a lot of students who are graduating. And a lot of them have only had a remote experience in terms of classes and so forth. So they become very facile with this kind of environment, as an example, this workshop and things of that nature. Do you see some of these things staying, or do you see some of these things going? How do we prepare both our alumni and our students for, this new frontier, this new horizon? And you all, whoever wants to wrestle for the first take at it, go right ahead.
I'm happy to start with this. So I recently saw a statistic that was from LinkedIn that says of people currently looking for jobs, over 50% of all applications in the previous month, so last month, were for remote roles, but remote roles only represent less than 20% of all jobs on LinkedIn. So again, over 50% of people applying for jobs on LinkedIn are applying for what is less than about 1/5 of jobs that are actually remote. So I think what that says to me as someone who's a hiring manager is people want flexibility. They've enjoyed the last 2 years and are looking for opportunities that present this. As a manager, I would say there's definitely benefits of being both in the office and also as well as being remote as well. So my team is hybrid. But I also think there's a lot of factors for people who are just graduating, thinking about the cost of commuting, the time that is spent, and so might be considering freelancing and contract roles, which I'd love to get into with this group. But there's also some trade-offs with that as well that I think it's important to have this conversation in this forum before signing up for those types of opportunities.
Absolutely, Lindsey. And I'm going to come back to the freelancing and contract. That's an important point. DeVaun or Kelsey, did you all want to chime in terms of how we're preparing both students and alumni for this new reality in which we find ourselves?
Yeah.
Sure. Go ahead, DeVaun.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off of Lindsey. I mean, Google, we prioritize collaboration, and they honestly want people in the office. I think you have seen the struggle of a lot of employees wanting to have that flexibility, and they have been used to, more of a hybrid environment. And honestly, we're able to do our roles very well in that hybrid state. So I think we are seeing a bit of a push and pull here. And at the end of the day, I think a hybrid model is the best way to go. If you want to be in the office, like I'm in the office right now, and you want that flexibility there, I think everyone should be able to choose what works best for them. So we've been back, I think this is our second week back, 3 days a week. And so there are some pros and cons. I like the office a bit more quiet than what it is now and less people. But it is great to see people and connect and have those conversations, in the hallway or with coffee. So I think there is a balance, and it's gonna stay for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
I'd agree with DeVaun. I do think that it is going to stay for quite some time, at least kind of this hybrid world that we're living in, a lot of the flexibility, because of the statistics that Lindsey read off, like it is, it's in demand, right? The flexibility. People want to be able to come in when they want. People want to be able to sit and, be able to focus either in office or at home, whichever way works best for them. And so I think either students now or even more recent alumni are just really going to have an open mind. I think even more so than maybe we would have when we were kind of applying for jobs or looking for our next opportunities right out of college, and really try to identify what's going to be the best opportunity for their career, what's going to give them that flexibility if that's what they want. You know, what's going to give you the skills? Are you going to be able to interface with your managers in person? Are you going to be able to have some FaceTime with executives in person, right? I think a lot of our jobs in the communications ad marketing kind of field, we're always in the mix of everything, right? And so we have to kind of keep that in mind of what, you know, when we're looking for companies, where do we want to be and how is it going to help us, I guess, accelerate our careers? Because I think a lot of that is very important earlier on. So I think we're just, again, I think everyone will just have to have a more open mind to think about where they want to be, what's going to help, and what they need from a company.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift just a little bit. I know that when Darla was talking before, she was talking about the notion of the Great Resignation, and that's very much a reality for every organization, all your organizations and others. I'm curious as to what do you all think is the kind of, what are the non-negotiables for employees, really as it relates to culture, like Kelsey, you were mentioning about, having people in and being around, interfacing with supervisors, and DeVaun, you had mentioned about, the socialization side, and certainly Lindsey, what the statistics, I think were right spot on. So what, or how has your organization kind of, and whoever wants to go first, initiative such as like diversity, equity, inclusion, or mental health, sustainability, things of that nature. And even more importantly for our audience, how do we attract and retain talent? I know we talked in the earlier panel about the pendulum swing, that, if you think it's an employer market or employee market, then there's certain things that are, that you want in terms of your demands, but are there some non-negotiables in terms of your respective organizations? And again, whoever wants to go first, or what you see as what would be a non-negotiable in terms of the culture that you all represent within your organizations.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing is, when you work at a large company, and given the recent happenings of the last 2 years, whether it was COVID or, even things that were going on culturally, I think people want to work for companies that are truly making an impact and are investing in, diversity, inclusion, equity, all of those different things. And they really want those companies to be leaders and at the forefront and care about their values. And so it's not just about, the type of position anymore, or even, although money is important, it's not just about how much you're making either. It's really about, what you can add to the culture and how you can make an impact, and ultimately how your company is making an impact. So I think a lot of employees are now looking for that, and it does really matter.
Absolutely, DeVaun. I'm just going to piggyback off of that, because what you just said reminded me of just some things I was noticing at my former employer. Obviously, right at the beginning of the pandemic, right after the murder of George Floyd, I think a lot of companies were kind of dealing with that. And I think employees, for the first time, which I think was the case with my company, there were a lot of younger employees that for the first time, like millennials, Gen Z, that for the first time had to say, okay, does my employer's values match up with mine? And is this okay for me if the answer is no? And what can I do to try to fix it, or do I need to leave? And there were so many people that I think made the decision to leave, and there were others that made the decision to kind of stay and try to improve the culture for the people that they were working with. And so I think that that's so important. So I think that's one of the main kind of non-negotiables now, because 2 years ago, we were in a place where we had to think about that. I think another non-negotiable is the flexibility. I think another non-negotiable is equity, right? And just making sure that people are a lot more cognizant of, how their employers are handling them, and do they have equitable paths for advancement, and what's the pay equity look like, right? And what opportunities are they getting within their departments? And so I think that's a really big part. And I think another big part is that folks feel like they have a safe space, and they feel like they're, that they're being taken care of, and that, they enjoy the people that they're working with, for sure. I'll let Lindsey jump in, but I do have a couple of things on kind of what the MBA is doing right now from a DEI, mental health, social justice perspective that I think might be helpful for the group as well.
Yeah, I would love to continue here. Everything you said, I was nodding along and agree with. I think I came to the realization a little bit prior to the pandemic that I would never align my work to anything but my values. I came on this path kind of accidentally. I had moved for my career to the Midwest for a fashion retailer and had accidentally learned how toxic our supply chain was, which was kind of alluded to earlier on. And for me, it was one of those things like I had grown up in the advertising department watching Mad Men, and I thought it was so crazy that there was an industry that was promoting cigarettes despite knowing the science. This is back in the 1960s. And so for me, as someone who is in fashion retail, I felt a lot of the same ways towards fast fashion and then a lot of things that were being put into the marketplace. And so one of my professors, early on in my Temple days had said, if you ever want to make an impact, you have to be with the largest players because they ultimately drive the largest scale. And so that's what then led me to my previous startup that was actually helping shift their packaging from single use to reusable. And now continuing on that path in the field that I am today. I would say I feel extremely more fulfilled every single day going into the office and knowing the impact I'm having. The people that I'm surrounded with are as equally as passionate and driven about the mission. So as you spend so much time in the office, especially during the last 2 years where there's been a lot of difficult topics, difficult events that have occurred, to be a part with a community that sees the world and is committed to creating solutions with you has been something I've really enjoyed to be a part of. So I don't think that's something that organizations can fake. You can definitely see that during an interview, read it through Glassdoor. But then also during your interview, it's not just one way. I think a very important thing is when you're going through the process, making sure the conversations feel like these are the people you'll be spending your day to day with, that it's a good fit. So I think one of the things DeVaun had mentioned is it's not all about pay. And I totally agree with that. You do have to take into consideration the fit.
Absolutely. Well, let me switch back over to Kelsey because I do want to hear about some of those DEI initiatives, and I'm going to switch back over because you all were talking about values, and I'm so pleased to hear that. Not only because that's how I've lived my life through my career, but also sometimes, particularly when you're starting out, you don't even know what your values might be to say, okay, this, and sometimes you have to go on a journey to kind of figure out, oh, this organization is that kind of, Lindsey, to your point about finding out, and you all shared it. So let me, Kelsey, if you wouldn't mind sharing about some of the initiatives. I know you started out with the NCAA, then went into the NBA and kind of like the work that you're doing. So it doesn't happen right away, but it does happen over time. So please share.
For sure. I think in my current role and the role that I was in prior to this one, the two common themes were my portfolio, the things that I'm working on. So that's D&I, social justice. And now I'm working on a little bit of kind of our HR benefits work and supporting them and kind of telling a story around that. So I probably more than anyone else know a lot more about our benefits at our company, but I think we have a really unique approach and almost like philosophy around our benefits, around D&I, and around how we choose to impact the community, because we are a global game and we want to make sure that impact is felt really internationally in all of the regions that we operate in. And I think the one important thing that we think about from a benefits perspective, I was actually just preparing our director of benefits for an interview to kind of talk about some of this stuff, is making sure that we're thinking about benefits equity. And so the way she approaches kind of what we offer to employees is making sure that we're getting something that will meet everyone where they are, and everyone can kind of enjoy it and take advantage of it for whatever they need it for, right? And I'll give you an example of this is we work with Carrot as our fertility benefits provider. And so that was something that they kind of came up with because it kind of started being a trend, but we were realizing that there were a lot of employees that were looking for opportunities to figure out they wanted to have families and start families, but maybe they didn't want to do it at that particular time. Or maybe there are same-sex couples that are not, their insurance was not going to cover the fees that they would have to incur in order to adopt, or do surrogacy things in that nature. And so, they just went on to find a partner to make sure that they can provide that benefit that covers and runs the gamut of all the different lifestyles and experiences our employees have. And so I think that's how they approach benefits, and that's how they approach D&I too. From a D&I perspective, we have been consistently implementing entry-level programs to make sure that we're diversifying our talent pipelines right at the start, so that over the next couple of years, where the problem is in executives, right, we're making sure that we're training up those people as soon as they come out of college, right through kind of our talent pipeline. And so an example of one of those programs is our new HBCU fellowship program, as part of our larger commitment to HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities across the country. Our first cohort of HBCU fellows is actually starting this June. It's going to be a 10-week program, and it'll be about 60 fellows across the league. So that'll be in our NBA league office in New York, working with us in the WNBA, as well as across our teams in 28 markets across the country. And so those folks have been selected and notified, and they are starting with a 2-day kind of orientation in June at the NBA league office. And so different programs like that, we're trying to make sure that we're getting people of color into departments and industries that they normally wouldn't necessarily be in, right? And so we have another program called Business and Basketball Training Program, where there are different branches of that. One is called Future Sales Stars, another is Future Analytics Stars, another is Future Basketball Operations Stars. And we pick those specific areas of our business because those are the business areas where we don't have much diversity in analytics, sales, and on the basketball ops side. So we're really just trying to meet students where they are, give them the training, skills, and development that they need to kind of become that next generation of executives in our business. We also provide management accelerator programming to all of our employees at the league office, and that's geared towards our Black employees. There's some geared specifically towards women. There's some specifically geared towards our Hispanic and Latino community. There's also some experience geared towards our AAPI community as well, to make sure that they are getting any extra skills that they need, making sure that their mobility is encouraged in our company, and making sure that they can, get what they need if they wanted to seek other employment outside of our company and across the sports industry. And so we've been recognized, I think, industry-wide as a leader in diversity, just kind of compared to the other sports leagues. We were actually honored with the Paul Tagliabue Award of Excellence at the Fritz Pollard Alliance Foundation Awards around the NFL Super Bowl. And so that recognizes a company or league that experience excellence and diversity for that year. And so we just try to make sure that we're not getting complacent, but just trying to find the things that, one, meet our employees where they are, but also continue to be on the pulse of kind of what the industry needs and what the data is telling us.
Absolutely. And I thank you for that, Kelsey. And I know I told you all this outside, we're going to run out of time. So let me get to a couple of other quick questions. One is, it's not lost on me that we're gathered together during Earth Month, and one thing that the pandemic has really kind of heightened the view about sustainability and the impact and carbon footprint. The fact that we're all together here, I'd love to be able to get your sense of, and this also relates to employability and choices. We're cutting down windshield time. We're gathering in groups as we need to from across the globe. I'd be curious to hear. I know this is really in your wheelhouse, Lindsey, but I know that the folks at Google and the NBA, I mean, there's a whole lot of things that have changed as a result of this global pandemic. So I'd love to hear what your organizations are doing, but also, how as employees are we, particularly with our audience, how should we start to think differently about how we do the work that we do? Lindsey, if you want to start, then I'll go to DeVaun and then end with Kelsey. And then I'm looking at our clocks. I know I need to get you guys to do some wrap up comments before I bring Jackie Hopkins back in. So go, Lindsey, you're up.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. So I would like to start by saying both DeVaun and Kelsey are organizations that are doing incredible jobs in terms of how they're thinking and approaching sustainability. Google's doing amazing things that are customer facing in terms of e-waste, and then also their offices. I've done a lot of work with them behind the scenes, both at my former and current organization, so really can attest to the great work. Same thing with Kelsey, with the NBA, there's a few stadiums that I work with today. They're having really cool conversations about what they're doing with their organics and composting and thinking about the recycled materials and how to repurpose it in ways that they hadn't previously that are very exciting. So on the topic of Earth Month, I know climate doomsday type things can get very daunting and scary, but I'd like to position it as really an opportunity for growth to whatever organization you go to, but then also for you individually within your career. One of the things that I was wary of up front is that I wouldn't be able to make the pivot myself without actually going back to school for it. But what I learned now at my second startup within this space is that we are creating the solutions that didn't exist. So there's a lot of room for opportunity and learning. And as long as you're a subject expert, you can really help move the mission within the organization and surround yourself with the solutions that are already out there to move your company forward. So I'll let both of them speak to their individual organizations and what they're doing, but it's a great career opportunity for anyone today. And then I'd also say for offices that do implement sustainability, they have furthermore engagement with their employees within the office. And it's been one of the #1 points of feedback. And there's a lot of articles that I can pass along after for you guys to share that actually show that people feel really excited going to the office and seeing these solutions in place.
I appreciate that, Lindsey. DeVaun, you want to go and then we'll go to Kelsey.
Yeah, sounds great. And Lindsey, honestly, you hit on a lot of great points that Google is doing. You know, we care a lot about water waste, care a lot about carbon emissions. And so a lot of our goals are tied to, 2030. And so you'll see some updates over the next few years in terms of the progress that we're making there. We really want all of our campuses and all of our offices to be green, 100% totally. So we're seeing that a lot with our new campuses and buildings, that sustainability is, top of mind when it comes to developing those different ecosystems for Google. And then we also partner very closely on the local level with all of the cities that we have our campuses in. And so, if there are goals or things in line with the government, the local government, we try to partner with them on sustainability efforts. And so that's one thing that I'm really happy to see Google do. And that's one of the reasons why I actually joined Google, is because you can see them make an impact across the board and not just within the tech industry, but more so leveraging the resources that we have to make that impact. And then I will say it's not just Google, Alphabet, our parent company. There are plenty of other smaller companies under the umbrella that are working on sustainability and thinking through, how we can provide resources on a global scale, like Wi-Fi, for example, or access to internet for all. So I think overall, it's really great work that all of our companies are doing. And I'm just proud to be a part of one of them. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, DeVaun. Go ahead, Kelsey.
That's awesome, DeVaun. And I'll just try to be quick here. The NBA has had their NBA Green, which is the sustainability platform, for years now. It kind of falls within their NBA Care social responsibility arm. I know we have probably about half or more than half now of our NBA arenas are LEED certified. And then we also, and I know you asked about kind of during and post-pandemic, Mr. Brown, but even prior to that in 2019, I'm always going to call you Mr. Brown.
I'm sorry.
we were the first sports league, I think, here to sign on to the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework. which in that we kind of pledged to a couple of different things and achieve certain benchmarks by a certain time period. So I think, and kind of similar to what DeVaun said, you'll see a lot more, I think, from the MBA on updates on that, and some more things that, some more things that we're figuring out that we can do to maybe offset some of our various emissions, in addition to some of the things that we've already been able to do. And I think that's something that we're always trying to figure out, is with all of our tentpole events throughout the year, whether that be All-Star, Draft, Summer League, et cetera, travel for the teams, and schedules, and our executives and things like that. How can we make sure that we're really supporting the most sustainable, I guess, climate that we can? And we also are adding a couple of new MBA green advisors. And so again, you'll see a couple more things from the MBA on that over the next couple of years as we reach the benchmarks that the UN provided.
Man, you all are doing such phenomenal things. I'm so proud to be part of the Klein family. It's all good. So let me do this. I'm watching our time. If I can ask you all just to kind of give your final remarks and kind of piece of advice that you would give our both alumni and students who are plugged into this about how they need to think about the next phase of what the future work. And unfortunately, the future is only 6 months away. So however you'd like to share, and then I'm going to pull Jackie Hopkins back in to give some final remarks. So whoever would like to go first, and then why don't we, I'll do the facilitator role. Let me start with Lindsey, if I could, and then DeVaun, and then we'll end with Kelsey.
Yeah, I would just say this is a very exciting time to be returning to work. There's been a lot of disruption, and there's a lot of things that are being rethought, and you can help but be a part of those new processes and new cultures that the organization you're joining or creating is in the next 6 months. It's hard when you're starting. I didn't get to think it over as much as I would, but I would just say, if I was graduating today, I would really be excited by the opportunity to really rethink of what I think working for me looks like.
DeVaun?
Understand what your non-negotiables are as a person and what your values are as an employee, and really lean into that. To Lindsey's point, there's so many opportunities now, and the job market has changed so much into, new graduates benefit, to be honest. So really just stay core to your values and lean into those as you're job searching.
Ms. Boyd?
I'd say, kind of like I said before, just really keep an open mind. Everything I think is changing by the day, it feels like, across the industry and industries, I'd say. So just keep an open mind, think about your transferable skills and kind of where you want to be in the long term. Think about your values and how, like DeVaun said, and how they match up with those skills and where you want to be. And find something that doesn't feel like work and that you're passionate about, and make sure that is, and just think about it in that way as you kind of look for opportunities and move forward in your career, because it's only going to make it so much better for you, and you'll feel comfortable to raise your hand and speak up in meetings and volunteer for things. So definitely keep those things in mind.
This is powerful advice. I'm going to quickly switch over to Jackie to offer some final remarks. I know we're right at the top of the hour. Go ahead, Jackie. And first, again, thank you all for the panel, but go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks, David. And thank you all. Seriously, just David, Darla, Kelsey, DeVaun, Lindsey, our amazing Klein panelists, family, and owls. And thanks to our attendees. We'd love for you to stay connected to Klein, share topics that you're interested in hearing more about. What drives you? What are your non-negotiables? Don't hesitate to stay in touch. There's strength in numbers. I invite you to learn more about the Alumni Association opportunities. You can participate and get involved. Just visit klein.temple.edu/AA. I'll throw that in the chat too. And just many thanks again. And we hope to connect soon. Have a wonderful evening and afternoon and morning, no matter where you're joining us from. Thanks again to our panelists, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.